There are people who move through life without a circle, no friends, no calls to answer, no group chat that misses them when they disappear. On the surface, it looks like isolation, but beneath it, there's a quiet complexity, a landscape of defense, memory, and subtle resilience. The psychology of not having friends is rarely about disinterest. It's about wiring. It's about how the nervous system was taught to experience connection as safety or as threat. For many, the distance began long before adulthood. It began in rooms where they felt unseen, unheard, or unimportant. In childhood, friendship is the rehearsal ground for intimacy. It's where the brain learns reciprocity, mirroring, attunement. But if you grew up with caregivers who were inconsistent, neglectful, or emotionally unpredictable, your mirror neurons never found a stable reflection. You learned that closeness could vanish at any moment, that love could withdraw without explanation. So, your brain did what all intelligent systems do. It adapted. It equated solitude with control, distance with safety, and silence with relief. Now, some people have no friends because, quite honestly, they've pushed them away. Not because they're evil or unworthy, but because something in their behavior keeps people at a distance. Maybe it's the constant criticism, the subtle control, the inability to apologize, the need to dominate conversations or always be right. Maybe it's the emotional volatility, the friend who drains the room, who never listens, who always needs saving. Sometimes people lose friends because they haven't learned the reciprocity of care, how to hold space for someone else without making it about themselves. These are the hard, unromantic truths we rarely say aloud. Not everyone who's alone is misunderstood. Some are alone because their wounds leak into others. Their unresolved pain becomes projection, defensiveness, bitterness, and even the kindest people will eventually pull away when it feels like every interaction costs them peace. There are also those who are too self-protective to let anyone close. They keep relationships shallow, a conversation here, a text there, but never enough to risk being seen. They disappear when things get intimate, overthink every invitation, convince themselves they're better off solo. It's not arrogance, it's fear dressed up as independence. Some people isolate not because they dislike others, but because they don't trust themselves in connection. They fear being too much, too emotional, too needy, or not enough. They've learned to manage their own company because they assume no one else will understand it. Others simply outgrow their environments. They evolve emotionally or spiritually while their surroundings remain stagnant. Suddenly, conversations that once felt stimulating now feel hollow, forced, misaligned. The result? A quiet drift. One day, they look up and realize they've outpaced their circle, and there's no one left walking beside them. Neuropsychologically, isolation often originates in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. In childhood, when emotional attunement is absent, the amygdala becomes hypersensitive. Every social cue begins to feel like potential rejection. Cortisol levels rise in anticipation, not of danger, but of disappointment. Over time, the body internalizes avoidance as peace. It feels calmer to withdraw than to risk being invisible again. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for emotional regulation and empathy, learns to suppress social impulses to protect the heart. This is why, as adults, people who grew up emotionally neglected often crave connection, yet feel exhausted by it. They oscillate between yearning and retreat, between wanting to belong and fearing what belonging might cost. It's not antisocial behavior, it's self-preservation masked as indifference. But there's another layer, an energetic one. Solitude can become alchemical. When you spend enough time in silence, you begin to hear the subtler frequencies of your own mind. You learn the sacred language of your inner world. The esoteric truth is that isolation refines perception. Without the noise of constant validation, the psyche begins to sense energy differently. The micro vibrations of authenticity, the difference between presence and pretense. People without friends often carry a high sensitivity. They see through dynamics too easily. They feel the undercurrents too intensely. The nervous system, always scanning for safety, becomes an instrument of intuition. The good side of being alone is that you meet yourself fully. You start noticing your inner seasons, the way your spirit contracts and blooms, the rhythms that aren't visible to others. Creativity, spiritual depth, and inner clarity often arise from this soil. Loneliness can transform into solitude, and solitude into wisdom. Yet, there's also the ache, the biological loneliness that no philosophy can erase. Human beings are wired for connection. Oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin all thrive in shared laughter, touch, and empathy. Without those relational nutrients, the brain begins to adapt in strange ways. The reward system dulls, the hippocampus shrinks under chronic stress. Even perception changes. Colors seem less vivid, music less moving, food less satisfying. The body interprets social starvation the same way it interprets physical hunger. It tightens, it fatigues, it dreams of being held. So when someone says, "I don't need friends," what they often mean is, "Needing has never worked out for me." Their independence isn't arrogance, it's a scar shaped into a personality. In adulthood, this pattern deepens. The world rewards productivity, not vulnerability. The one who keeps to themselves, who seems self-contained, is often praised for being strong. But beneath that strength is a nervous system that has learned to contract before it expands. There's an invisible grief in this, a grief for the versions of us that wanted to be known and couldn't be, for the laughter that had no witness, for the milestones that no one celebrated. When you have no friends, time moves differently. Moments stretch longer, silence grows louder, and yet something sacred happens too. You become your own witness. You begin to reparent your aloneness. You start asking softer questions. What if solitude isn't punishment but preparation? What if your stillness is teaching you discernment, to sense who truly sees you beyond performance? From a neuropsychological lens, healing this pattern means retraining the social nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve governs our sense of safety and connection. When it's dysregulated, social cues register as danger. Through breath, mindfulness, and safe relational experiences, the vagus can relearn calm and proximity. Slowly, the body remembers that connection doesn't have to burn. Eye contact stops feeling invasive. Small talk stops feeling meaningless. Touch begins to soothe, rather than alarm. The goal isn't to collect friends, but to cultivate resonance, the kind that feels safe enough to stay. Spiritually, the lesson of having no friends isn't isolation, it's integrity. It teaches discernment. It teaches how to exist without external mirrors. It shows you where your energy leaks and where it flows. There's a karmic purification in solitude, the clearing away of performative attachments, the collapse of false belonging. Some souls come into this life to master self-companionship before union. They are the energetic alchemists, transmuting loneliness into self-awareness, silence into clairaudience, and separation into inner sovereignty. But even then, there's balance. Too much solitude can calcify the heart. The same walls that protect you can also imprison you. Healing asks for openness, to risk letting someone witness your truth without needing to disappear afterward. And maybe that's the quiet revolution, learning to belong again, not through performance, but presence. When you begin to feel safe inside your own nervous system, friendship shifts. It's no longer about feeling emptiness, it's about resonance. You stop seeking people who distract you from yourself and start attracting those who mirror your calm. Connection becomes sacred, not compulsory. You meet others not out of fear of being alone, but from the joy of being found. If you have no friends right now, you're not broken. You're between versions of yourself. You're in the fertile void where old relational patterns dissolve. Your nervous system is unlearning urgency. Your energy is clearing residue. Your psyche is recalibrating for truth. This space, though painful, is holy. It's the cocoon stage of the heart. And when the time comes, when the body finally believes that love no longer equals danger, you'll emerge naturally into connection again. Until then, solitude can be your teacher, not your punishment. Learn its rhythm. Let it soften you rather than harden you. Because friendship, at its highest form, begins inside, with how gently you treat the parts of you that once begged for belonging.